It's the last day for March. Okay, it's March 31, 2023. Good morning, Philippines. Good morning to all our viewers here on One News and those of you watching our program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. Once again, thanking you for being subscribers of Cignal TV and viewers of One News, and of course, for following us on Facebook and on YouTube, as well as the Cignal Play app. Thank you also to PLDT Home Fiber Optic Internet, and mabanggit ko na rin, Philippine Star. Okay, my home paper, the place where I have my column 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay, so I said it's March 31, 2023, and it's a Friday. So this is the last weekend before Holy Week. So let's make the most of it, and in preparation for the holiest of weeks in the Philippines. And let's now go to our daily starter. While watching the TV series The Chosen about the life of Jesus Christ, I came across our daily starter for the day, and it is a scene that involves the Apostle Matthew before he became an apostle, talking to a Roman legion, and the legion was saying, you seem to have taken good care of yourself in spite of the condemnation, challenges, etc. And this was the reply of Matthew: when you realize that no one else in the world cares what happens to you, you think only about yourself. Now, you might wonder, grabe naman, Cito. Isn't that a negative daily starter, when you actually provide us with something that is a reflection of selfishness? No, it's an insight. It's an insight to people. You might know people that you say only think of themselves. You might know of people who just basically avoid interaction, makasarili, etc. But we are always encouraged by our mentors to, before judging others, make sure you know what lives they live, okay? Do not judge a man or a woman until you have walked in their shoes or lived their life. And that scene with Matthew was a reminder to us that there are people who may seem selfish, self-absorbed, etc., but in reality, it is possibly because the world isolated them. In the case of Matthew, before he became an apostle of Jesus Christ, before he became the author of the first 4 books of the New Testament, he was a tax collector. And in the milieu, or in the time back in Israel, the tax collectors were the traitors of the country. Sila yung tinatawag natin noong World War II na mga makapili, and even worse than makapili, because the tax collectors back then would also rob their own. Kinukolekta mo na yung pera for the Roman occupiers, and you still take advantage of your own people. So, as a result of that isolation, and because of Matthew's condition, he started looking after himself. Okay, so that's our daily starter. When you realize that no one else in the world cares what happens to you, you think only about yourself. Let's now go to the front page of the Philippine Star. And the headline is quite sad. It's been in the news since the other day, but the headline is, at least 31 people were killed in the Basilan Fire. Okay? At least 31 people died in that Basilan Fire, the MV Lady Mary Joy that caught fire the other night, and there are reportedly still seven people missing. Okay, and yun po, it's a Roro that was traveling from Zamboanga City to Holosulu, and it caught fire the other night. And ayun, 31 reported dead, 7 missing. We will follow up on that story. The big picture is up there at the top of the front page. And the header of the Philippine Star, Speaker Martin Romualdez is caretaker of Teves congressional seat. Okay, Speaker Martin Romualdez is officially, temporarily taking over the 3rd congressional district that is occupied by Congressman Arnulfo Teves after Teves refused to return to the Philippines, was subsequently suspended, given a 2-month suspended by the Ethics Committee of Congress, and has now been officially declared a fugitive. Okay. So yun po. Meanwhile, speaking of law and order, President Bongbong Marcos has declared that rule of law prevails in the Philippines. This was done through a video message where PBBM declared that in the Philippines, the rule of law prevails and the justice system is fully functioning. He maintained that the country will not cooperate with the International Criminal Court or ICC in its probe on the deaths of thousands in the drug war of the previous Duterte administration. Okay. Below that story, ASF spreads to 16 regions. Only NCR has no cases. After a long time of limiting ASF to 15 out of 17 regions, it has now been declared by the BAI, or Bureau of Animal Industry, that they now have reported case in the Bangsa Autonomous BARM, okay, Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. Okay, so Metro Manila na lang daw ang walang ASF because technically there are supposed to be no hog raisers or farms inside Metro Manila. So that is bad news. Let's turn now to little more positive news. The center of the Philippine Star, featuring President Bongbong Marcos, that was shared by Vanessa Hudgens on Instagram, showing the film actress and digital influencer enjoying the sun on Pangalusian Island in El Nido, Palawan. Okay, inset shows President Marcos bestowing on Hudgens the Global Tourism Ambassador Award at Malacanang yesterday as part of the campaign to promote the Philippines as a travel destination. So, yun po. Okay. And next, below that, we have Philippines, China pursuing joint energy exploration in the West Philippine Sea. Despite their still unresolved maritime rift, the Philippines and China remain open to the prospect of joint oil and gas explorations in contested waters. Okay? Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo disclosed the scenario and emphasized that any talks or discussions on the matter would be based on the country's laws. Okay, laws. Okay. And below that story, we have a picture of the Creamline Cool Smashers volleyball team celebrating after beating the Petrogas Angels to win the Premier Volleyball League 2023 All-Filipino Crown at the Mall of Asia Arena yesterday. Below that, the sad news, or I don't know, disturbing news, Philippine debt rises to 13.75 trillion. Okay, nagtaka pa kayo na may inflation tayo. Puro utang na kasi. Okay, utang na wala nang laman loob. Okay, we now owe 13.75 trillion pesos. And to the right of the Philippine Star, our last featured news, photo of engineer Martin Cooper, who is said to be the inventor of the mobile phone. Okay, siya po yung naggawa raw ng mobile phone, saying that the problem with mobile phones is that people look at them too much. Okay, and he even pointed out that he has seen so many people looking at their phones while crossing the street. And Cooper added that perhaps if enough people get run over, they will get the message. Okay, yan po. So that's a reminder to many of you. And we actually just came across one of those young people who crosses the streets looking at their screen and not at the vehicles as they cross. Montik-montik na siyang masagasaan. And that's all the news I believe we have for the Philippine Star today. March 31, 2023, Friday. Let us now... Let us now go to our interview for today. And let's roll out the Betamax, Gabriel.
Charity Marohombsar is a life doula for those near or in end-of-life situations like cancer warriors and their loved ones too. She is also a stage 4 breast cancer survivor. As a life doula, Marohombsar provides guidance and support to clients, helping them thrive in this difficult time and find joy in their journeys.
Good morning, Ma'am Charity. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here, Sir Cito.
Ay,
pero parang kailanganin akong tumawag ng sir, mas matanda ako sa'yo.
Malabo yun. That is unlikely that you are older than me. Okay, but no sirs, no moms here. This is a very relaxed program. It's a program where we try to understand new things, new concepts, such as what we're about to talk of today. And Charity, medyo puzzled ako by the term doula. What is the root of the word doula? Is it Arabic? Is it Latin? Could you tell us?
Doula is actually a Greek word.
Okay.
And this was an idea I was trying to figure out how to call what I do, because cancer coach has not been very prevalent in the Philippines. And then when I researched about doulas are women in the ancient times who took care of pregnant women from the time they get pregnant up to the time they give birth. So, kumbaga Cito, the foundation is nurturing a person. So, when I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, I was working in the corporate world, but I realized that there was so much gap in the healthcare system. And it's not just in the Philippines, but also globally, where patients are really treated and the focus is very disease-centric. No? When you go to an oncologist or a surgeon, they always focus on the body. Anong kailangan ng katawan. Whereas the cancer journey, I always say, the battlefield is really in the mind, in the emotions, in spiritual aspects. So, thus I coined the word life doula because I'm a non-medical practitioner, but I somehow focus on helping cancer patients navigate through their cancer journey. Because Cito, when you get diagnosed with cancer, there is no like manual that says, oh, this is what you have to do, this is what you will expect. Walang ganon, no? So I learned by asking people how I will navigate through my cancer journey. So that was a gap that I saw when I was undergoing treatment.
Before getting cancer, what exactly was your life? You mentioned corporate life because just yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, when we interviewed, the other day, we interviewed a professor who pointed out that many women who work as a flight attendants are susceptible to triggers of breast cancer or cancer because of the disruption of their circadian rhythm, the time zone disruptions, etc. And I've heard that time and again because my sister is was an FA and is a cancer survivor. In your case, ano ba yung buhay mo? What was your life like before you got cancer?
Okay, I used to be one of the executives, and I always say this with much admiration, that I spent a large part of my life with the Aboitiz group of companies. So I was with them when I had cancer, blessed that I was with them when I had cancer. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how me and my family would have survived my illness. As you know, cancer is really not supported by a lot of our HMOs. No? Kung may support man, parang sa laki ng gastos, siguro first cycle pa lang, ubus na. No? So, but you mentioned a lot of very important things. So I was living in the corporate world, but really when I look back now, I had so much deficiency on sleep. Because of work and pressure and stress. And this is really innate in the person, no? How you manage your sleep and your stress. Because Tito, not just breast cancer, really globally, statistically, and you guys can look it up, cancer cases, only 5% is really attributed to genetics. The rest of the 95 is either environment, what's around us, the chemicals that we are exposed to every day, and 45% is really lifestyle. And on top of that, lifestyle is really stress and sleep, and of course diet and all that stuff. No? So that was my life. As you know, whether you're an executive or not, you're still an employee, right? So you deal with so many things. On top of the fact that I'd work around 12, 14 hours a day, or sometimes 16, and I only get to sleep 2 to 3 hours a day. So truly a bad combination.
Okay, okay. Medyo yung pala, kanya pala, 2 to 3 hours a day. Parang here's a gun, shoot me. Kasi ganun din ang kalalabasan niyan, di ba? But anyway, so unfortunately, you came down with cancer. Was it a late discovery? Did you track it early enough? And what in the process got you to realize, wait a minute, there's a big piece that's missing in the treatment?
When I was diagnosed, unfortunately, it was already very late stage. So stage 4. By the time it was diagnosed, I already had metastatic bone cancer. So the aches in my shoulders pala and the back, which I attributed to probably the long hours of standing, or I would travel 4 different places every month. I would just attribute it to baka ang dami ko lang dala, no? But no pain. Normally, cancer doesn't present with a pain, not unless it's in our stomach area. When it complains, normally it's already at the late stage. I'm sure you've heard of that, na parang our body doesn't complain, and when it does, medyo late stage na yon. So what
Revenge na.
Yeah.
Revenge stage na siya. Parang, hello, di mo ako inasikaso, balikan kita ngayon.
Tama. When we truly ignore what our body is telling us, like what you said, 2 to 3 hours at the time, mayabang pa ako na I don't need much sleep, I can work because I truly was functional with 3 hours of sleep. Little did I know that sleep was very important when we regenerate healthy cells. When you don't sleep, hindi ganong nagfa-function yung katawan natin.
Okay, so you're stage 4 cancer, late discovery, not a lot of signs, but it was already in the bone,
Yes.
or was it bone marrow?
Bones.
Okay,
all over
bones.
my body, yeah.
Okay, so what happened?
So when I was told it was stage 4, and ang unang tanong ko, ilang beses ako gagamutin, the answer was shocking, and the doctor said there's no end in sight when we will stop treatment. That actually made me realize, oh, this is bad. Because parang bottom line, walang guarantee if I will get better. Number 2, wala rin guarantee kung kailan matatapos yung gamutan. So that's when I really looked deeply into my journey. And I started, little things become very glaring, like cancer patients would go to treatment with no one. And on the average, it's about 6 hours, right? And then I was telling myself, if I was going through a lot of emotional struggles and mental struggles, what more the other patients? So what I did, Cito, was I took time during the times that I would be on chemo and really went out of my way to start talking to people. And then I realized there is a dimension that's not really being taken care of and has not been given focus, like who talks to cancer patients about how they're navigating through their emotions, because it's truly a roller coaster ride. Who talks to them about their fears? Right now, my clients, I devote a portion of my night waiting for them to call, because it's in the evening when all these anxieties, all these what ifs, all these bad scenarios are really playing in their heads, because that's when the love givers or the people who take care of them are patulog na or getting some sleep. It's when you're alone that you encounter all of these emotions. And I said, no one is doing that. I mean, it's not that bad to go and see a psychiatrist, but certainly it's a space where you can get some help by talking to someone who understands you and process you. So when I was undergoing treatment, I didn't have enough tools, but the mere presence of someone being beside a sick person was truly comforting. And I said, this is something I want to do. So fast forward, I decided to leave corporate and studied, got certified to do coaching for cancer patients. But another door opened. When you undergo cancer, it's a fork road naman, Cito. You either get well or you don't. And the hardest part is when you don't get well. Because what I have observed, culturally, I guess, it's so hard for us to say, tama na. Enough with treatment. Let's talk about quality of life. That's rarely a conversation on the table. A lot of times, people are already told that the treatment objective is not anymore curative, it's palliative. But the family does not know how do we navigate through a palliative phase. Nobody explains. The doctor does, of course, but again, the emotional side. What does this mean to me emotionally? So from a life coach, I also manage and take care of end-of-life patients where they're already told, we've exhausted Western medicine. I think we can't cure you anymore. But surprisingly, 80% would still want to push and push and push. And so we lose that quality of life. However long or short we have, people still want to keep on treating the body when there's no more hope being given to cancer patients. So I don't just hold space for the patients, but also for the family. It's the hardest for the family to help them process, ito na mangyayari. No? So that's what I do.
Let's take a few steps back. As you mentioned, it is at night when you leave time for your clients or or the patients, because that is the time they often need someone because they're by themselves. And while listening to you, I don't know, maybe it's just the writer in me, or I'm taking off from something I saw. It is in the dark when we are the loneliest and we are all the most alone. Now, making decisions, life-changing decisions, like that fork of the road that you mentioned, that's not easy. And especially if you're coming from the corporate world, and I've been there, then suddenly going to the non-corporate world. In your case, you're not, from what I understand, you're not medically trained professional, you're not a doctor, nor are you what do they call it, an osteopath or something, the non-medical healer. So some people might have even said, are you crazy? You're going to give up all of this? You already got sick. Just enjoy your life. Bring us to that point in the crossroad.
One of the prayers a cancer patient would always ask for when faced with an advanced stage cancer or even just plain cancer is additional years. I have 3 kids, and I have one daughter, and every time I think about my situation and when she will graduate, that was the negotiation part, Cito. We negotiate a lot of things in the corporate world. That's when I negotiated for more years. And I kept asking that question, and one morning when I was praying, there was just like a whisper in my heart, which I thought was the answer. And the answer was, if I give you 10, 15 more years, how will you live your life differently? And that really made me think very hard. And I looked at the space where I was in. I saw that there was a gap. Back in the corporate world, I was already an executive coach, and I really had passion and appetite in holding space for my people or any other employee who needs my advice, right? So the experience coupled with the passion, knowing that there is a huge gap, I equipped myself. And you did mention I'm a non-medical practitioner, and that's why I studied for almost a year when I became an end-of-life doula, because the bulk of that study is like a crash course in medicine. Like I had to understand what are the top 15 causes of death and how are they managed medically and non-medically. So I went through that, and I had to make sure I get that certification. So sabi nga nila, may K ka to be able to hold space for cancer patients.
So it wasn't a matter of just, hello, nag-stage 4 cancer na ako, nabuhay pa ako, may K ako or may karapatan ako. You actually had to you had to be certified, get certification as an end-of-life coach. Now, Honestly, Charity, this is the first time I've heard of that. There's actually a place to get training, education to be an end of life coach because, I mock, and I'll be very transparent. I mock, all these coaching certificates because I tell them, hello, 25 years old ka pa lang, coach ka na, medyo magpatubo ka muna ng uban sa ulo, ano? So maybe the arrogance of the elderly on my part. But where do you go for such trainings and certification?
The end of life doula wave started in United Kingdom, and the US caught up very, very quickly. And the history there is also the same. They saw a lot of gaps in the way patients were being taken care of and, being disease-centric or patient-centric. I mean, really looking at the whole person. And not just that, we're forgetting one component in the end-of-life space, the family. How do you prepare? So I got certified in an institute called Doula Givers, and these majority are medical practitioners. About 80% are registered nurses. So you can imagine kung gaano ako naghabol in terms of knowledge. But I think when I scanned the room, I told myself, if I can understand all these tools, I can understand the medical side of it, at least those that are very, very common. Then my advantage is the fact that I went through it myself. So I can hold people's hand with the skills that I have and with the experience saying, I know what you're going through. I understand completely what you are going through. So the experience and the knowledge and the skills combined is what I bring to the table right now.
Okay, let's go for a quick break, Charity. And when we come back, let's lay it all out. Where do you start? When should people call out to you, etc.? What is the journey of being the end of life coach? We'll be right back here on Agenda.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. And this morning, we are having a conversation, very interesting, sobering, somber conversation with Charity Marohombsar, a certified life and transformational coach who specializes as a life doula for cancer warriors and survivors. She is an end-of-life coach. Now, Charity, so when do people come to you? When are patients or families referred to you? Because just as a heads up, I'm married to an expat, well, not an expat, a foreign national from the Netherlands. And my wife Karen always talks to me about how things are in Europe, and we kind of compare things. And in Europe, the priority is the patient. You don't talk to anybody else until you've spoken with the patient. It's a patient priority and privilege first. Now, in the Philippines, parang nauna lagi yung kamag-anak, yung pasyente parang, ano nangyayari? Okay.
Yeah. Cito, that's very correct, no? A lot of times, may mga pasyente ako na hindi nila alam, may sakit sila. Pero ang kumakausap sa akin kamag-anak, especially kung medyo nasa twilight years na, no, matanda na, they talk to me, and my policy is aligned to what you're sharing. I need to talk to the patient because the patient, number one, needs to be willing to have me on board as part of her or his cancer support team. So in what stages am I brought in? Actually, iba-iba. Dati, I was brought in when they are already undergoing treatment. But because I've been somehow visible, now I get patients at the onset. Like they will be referred to me by an oncologist and say, I know this person, talk to her about how to navigate through your cancer journey. But majority of those referred to me are really the late or the advanced stage cancer patients.
Okay, so let's clarify that so that people don't freak out. Charity is not only an end-of-life coach, she is also a cancer warrior who guides other cancer warriors, because that is correct. Based on the few stories I've heard personally, it is like being thrown into the wilderness when you are told you have cancer and you don't see a starting line and there are no finish lines.
That is true. That is true. And there's no handbook. There's no manual that says, okay, you've just been diagnosed with cancer, read this. This is what you need to expect. A lot of times, you experience it yourself, and sometimes you wonder what's happening to me.
Why not, Charity? You're not the last person. You're not the first person with cancer that I've spoken to. And I've heard that time and again, I almost want to write the book. Parang hello, sa bilyon na kayong nagka-cancer, hindi pa nyo naisip gumawa ng libro?
Thank you for doing that, for saying that. We're actually in the process of putting something together because right now I'm improvising as I go along. Like, okay, so you're newly diagnosed. Ang unang tanong sa akin, so magkikimo na ako, anong kailangan ko? Okay, so you get pieces of information from other cancer patients. So I'm launching a chemo care package where this is what you need when you go through chemo, because this is what you will expect. On the first couple of days or weeks with chemo, you are blessed if your onco is very thorough. I have been blessed because my onco is very thorough, and that's why I learned from her, and we partner together now, seeing this gap. We try to put together something, a more structured way of approaching your cancer journey.
Okay, so you're a cancer warrior guide, and you are end-of-life coach. Now, okay, so people are referred to you, some at the beginning, some at the end stage. Now, who do you talk to first? Patient or family?
Normally, families reach out to me first. Okay.
Is that correct? Is that proper? After what we've said, because I sure as hell don't want to be the last to know.
Yes. I noticed that when it's the elderlies that are sick with cancer, it's the families that reach out to me first. And my condition is always I'd like to be able to help and work only if the patient is willing to talk to me first. So I have what I call, refer to as a discovery session, where the patient and I talk without the family. And there I gauge, ano bang kailangan ng pasyenteng to? Is there acceptance already? Am I gonna start from acceptance because there's just so much denial, right? But if the patient is still young, and Cito, sadly, cancer is not anymore a disease of the older generation. My youngest patient is, I've had a patient na 7, 8 months old, or itong sa adult, early adults, 26 years old. They're the ones, except for the 7 months, they're the ones who would reach out and ask. And a lot of times, ito yon. Pwede bang wag mong sabihin muna sa family ko? Especially if it's advanced stage, they want to be able to process it on their own first. So,
Are people or patients able to process it logically, in general, on the average? Are they able to process it logically, or good luck with that?
no. Especially because our culture is very like, we need to make sure that we do everything para magamot o mabuhay pa or madugtungan pa yung buhay. So, logic is the last thing that kicks in. Emotions, barrage of emotions, guilt if the family wants to make sure na si nanay kailangan pampahabain yung buhay. No, so I'm the person who would come in and say, what is the treatment goal? That's the first question I ask. What is a treatment goal? And the reason why I ask that is the rest of the steps is really going to be driven by the treatment goal. If the treatment treatment goal, Cito, are just two things, no? Curative and palliative. If it's curative, laban tayo hanggang sa dulo. If it's palliative, it means you've run out of options or your body cannot handle it anymore. Kahit may options ka, hindi na kaya ng katawan. No? So this is...
Not all the money in the world is going to help. Not all the doctors in the world is going to help if your organs have basically 9 out of 10 said, we're getting even.
Yes.
Okay,
so,
but let me ask you, Charity, where is it? It may sound, hello, Beltran, common sense lang yan, but does it really, is it easier when patients know? Is it easier to coach them, to guide them when they know, or sometimes it just makes things even worse?
The understanding and the acceptance, even if it's just a very small door that's open for acceptance, helps in the coaching space. There's willingness, and you see, a real coach does not have an agenda. A real coach waits for the patient to bring up what they want to discuss in the coaching space. So while I know it at the back of my mind what they need, it's very important that they bring up the issue. Because when they bring up, it's almost like they are committed to resolve the issue. So one of the hardest, Cito, let's talk about end of life. One of the hardest things that I'm encountering right now is what the other end of life doulas in the UK and in the US do at the onset. And that is your living will. People do not want to talk about living will.
Good luck on that. I gave up. My own mother refused to do that, although she did finally make a will and left it in a notebook. But a lot of people just say, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's great. I'll remember to do that," but they don't. Now, okay, so living wills are the first step. Fixing your house, as they say, estate planning is the partner to the living will. But as here in the Philippines, what's your strategy?
In the Philippines, when I am told, and especially if I'm appointed as a health proxy, that happens, no? Because the family doesn't want to make all the emotional decisions. Normally, the people like me are appointed as a health proxy. There's a legal document. In the U.S., it's prevalent that the end-of-life doulas are the health proxies. The strategy is I talk to the patient, and then I ask permission from them to talk to the family. Cito, one of the biggest challenges of patients in general is when they lose that sense of empowerment or control. When the family starts taking over and makes decision for them, especially if the patient is a patriarch, nako, mahirap yun. That sense of I am not in control anymore adds to the disease. They feel weaker, they feel disempowered. So I ask their permission. But first I ask them, the living will that, the portion of the living will that I handle is this. What are your wishes? What decisions do you want to make now when you cannot make any decisions anymore? And some examples. Do you want to have tracheotomy if the doctors recommend it? Do you want to be
Intubated?
Do you want to be intubated? That's what we refer to as a directive called DNI. Do not intubate. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to be infused with artificial medicine to raise your blood pressure? Right? Do you want any invasive procedure when you're in the ICU? And when people resist this is my strategy. If you love your family, you make that decision for them now. Do not shift that burden to them when you cannot anymore decide.
Well, you've raised two important points that I've walked through myself. And ladies and gentlemen, this is important. My family, we all declare do not resuscitate. We all live by the DNR policy. And I basically became the medical representative for my mother being the eldest. And it helps. It helps if someone has been delegated or ascends to that position by role to make the decision, because everyone else can just sit in a corner and pray and come to terms with the situation while these necessary decisions are made. So you do that as a life coach. You do the medical representation when the family members are just so distraught, or there's just so many of them, they'll end up killing each other trying to make a decision. And you are also the one who suggests, if you want to make decisions, make them now, because you won't be able to if you have a pipe down your throat, if you have a cut on your throat, if you are in a coma, etc. You may be conscious but unable to communicate. So decide now and put it in paper. Okay, so good. What's next?
So, and that doesn't end there. The other part is, once all those important decisions are made, then I meet with the family, with the patient, so we are on the same page. Wala yung, ay, hindi yan pwede, ma. Hindi yan pwede. So, that's a tendency of Filipinos, us Filipinos. Hindi pwede, hanggang sa huli, kailangan. We will do everything, And so, if the patient is aware of the decisions she or he makes, then siya talaga yung final say. And a lot of times they sign on it. You know this. That's why I prefer holographic living wills.
Yeah. Have you ever found yourself verbally slapping a relative? Yung bang mga pumapapel, pakialamera, masyadong nag-e-emote. Parang, teka, ang tatay mo 100 years old na. Pwede ba just let go? Dahil pinahihirapan mo, pati yung hospital galit na.
Yeah. I think there's one or two families that I had to really, sit down because the mother was already yelling at my on the background, calling out my name, saying, Charity, iuwi mo na ako. And that's hard, right? And I have to sit down with the family and acknowledge where they're coming from. Masakit to. However, this is your mother's body. So she's the only one who can say, tuloy pa, tapos na, right? And then I explained to them, which a lot of people do not want to talk. So here, Cito, it's an uphill battle for me. It's a question. We are told your mom has only 3 months. How do we make it better for your mother to prepare for this journey? A lot of people, 99% of the time, will say, you're attracting death. Right? You're attracting death. And this is one of my biggest advocacies. You talked about conversation. This is a hard conversation a lot of us need to talk about. Do you know that in UK there is a growing trend of growth of what we refer to as death cafes? And when I went and checked out, I said, I don't think the Philippines is ready for this. So it's really a community place where people come and talk to people like me and ask, how do I do this? So I have successfully probably rolled out end-of-life programs to several patients. And it's really a beautiful thing when a family comes together, right?
Yeah.
To be able to plan the activities, the remaining months of the life of their loved ones.
You're quite correct there because, we're all going to die. And I always tell people, if the doctor and if the Lord Almighty gave you a heads up, an advance notice na, pare ko, you only have 3 months, be thankful because at least you had a warning and you can fix and put your house into order, your life into order. But quickly, before we run out of time, Charity, do you get pushback from the medical institutions, from the doctors? Because I remember when I declared do not resuscitate for my mother and I prevented an intern from further injecting medicines that were not. And I said, why are you going to do that? Oh, so we can just finish it all up. For what? She's dying. That's not going to revive her. Leave her in peace. And the intern actually, he was so shocked by the idea that we were not prolonging the life of my mother. He broke into tears. And I said, that's the problem. You are trained to save lives, but not trained to accept death.
That is so true. In our space and in our culture, people celebrate life. It's a natural process. But death is a natural process. But nobody wants to accept it, right? Nobody even wants to talk about it. Do I get into some tensions with medical practitioners? Fortunately, because I always include them in what I do. I keep the doctors informed. I keep the support team informed. I hardly get into clashes because they're also that's why I say I hold space for the whole ecosystem. I also talk to them about it. I said, you and I play a different role. Yours is a role that will keep the patient alive. Mine is the more realistic one. Let's know when to stop. Let's let life play out. Minus all these contraptions and give the patient that dignity of dying.
Have you seen a difference among your patient clients in their attitude and in their peace between those who are spiritual, those who have a personal relationship with God, versus those who have been caught up in life, who are, corporate people, etc. Have you seen a difference in their attitude and acceptance of death?
Definitely. The more spiritual ones, I wouldn't even say religious, are the ones that, the door is half open. I rarely see a patient naman who's like, I welcome it, except for the religious patients that I have, the nuns and the priests, right? There is a huge difference. It's a lot easier when I tell them, okay, it's time to do our forgiveness tour. What is a forgiveness tour? I ask them for a list of people that they want to talk to, they want to forgive, they want to, make peace with. It's so much easier. But let me tell you this. Believer or non-believer, at the deathbed, they will recognize that. The only difference is the believers or the spiritual people, those with personal relationship with God, recognize it earlier. But the body knows, the patient knows. So there are times when they're the ones who really initiate. Like, I want to talk to this person, I want to talk to this person. I had a patient where I had to be with her all the way from the Philippines to San Francisco just to say goodbye to families. Mm-hmm. And Cito, I have mounted what I call life celebrations, and that is the equivalent of a wake, except that we do this with the patient still alive.
Party.
So, yeah.
Party, and, okay.
Instead of eulogies being told when the patient is gone, the honoring, that's the counterpart of the eulogy, is
that's I wouldn't mind having that for myself.
Yeah, and okay. And you know what? My first ever was nerve-wracking. I didn't know how people will react, but when you just allowed, people to talk, there is that conversation that's happening, and it's real goodbyes, closures. When they do the honoring, the patient answers, and every time I do this, the feeling of heaviness at the final hour is so much less.
Okay. Well, Charity,
so different.
Yeah, Charity, I'm so sorry. I'm really into what we're talking about, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. But hopefully, there will be a part 2 in the future. And thank you for the work you do. I know it's not easy, but I am certain it is very fulfilling and very helpful. God bless you. God bless
Thank you so much.
God bless your work. Okay. That's Charity Joyce Marohombsar. And we pray that our viewers would all keep an open mind, an open heart, and of course, be connected with the Lord so that all of this is just a journey until our final destination. Let's now go to our final blessing for the week from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 13. And it goes, the Lord will make you the head and not the tail, and you shall only go up and not down, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, being careful to do them. Okay, it's been a fruitful educational week here on Agenda. I hope you learned a lot, and please take care of yourselves this weekend and prepare for the coming Holy Week. God bless all of you. Please keep it here on One News.